in order to walk a certain amount of distance outside the city? Did you make that Eruv? They would ask the family, did you take off the tithes? I asked somebody this morning, I want to look more into it, Ralph. He said that yes, the Levi also has to take off Maaseh. You asked the question yesterday.
Right.
And also the Mishnah stated that you would say to the members of the household, Adliku Asaner. It's time to light the candles in honor of the Holy Shabbat. And we said that if it's Safik HaShecha, the Mishnah stated on 34a, A2, Safik HaShecha, Safik Einish HaShecha, when you're not sure whether it's night or not, meaning it's twilight, after the sun has gone down, before the stars have come out. So that's called Safik HaShecha. It's a Safik of darkness, Safik Einish HaShecha, the doubt of maybe it's not dark. Ein Ma'asrin et Avadai. We said you can't take off Maaser, food that was definitely not separated, any of the types, any of the Maaser. And we said, in Matpilin is a Kalim. We said you can't dip the utensils in the mikveh, right? We said not only a utensil that became contaminated. Good morning, Mark. Welcome back.
Thank you.
Welcome. And we said, we brought there's a pshat that says that you can't even dip a utensil that you bought from a non-Jew, and you want to dip it in the mikveh. You can't dip it in the mikveh once the sun has gone down, because that's like fixing. Good morning, Ronnie. Boker Tov. And the Mishnah states of morning, Adam. Once we have some of the people on the screen and here, someone has a conflict tomorrow to do it later than the regular time. Because tomorrow the minyan is 7:30, 8:30. We were thinking of doing 7:45. Someone has a conflict. The question is, would the regular time work for everybody? That's the question. Anybody have any comments on that? Mark, Ronnie?
No, it's fine.
Traveler.
Okay. And Ronnie, to you, it's the same. And Ralph said also the same. Okay. Adam said yesterday it's the same. Right, so we're going to have to talk to Nathan. Okay. So the Mishnah stated that we ended yesterday, Ma'asin Esat Mai. What's Ma'asin Esat Mai? We said there's types, if there's food that you bought from an uneducated Jew, and you're not sure if he took off the types or not. The majority used to take off the types, but there was a minority of non-educated Jews called the Amei Haaretz that did not take off the types because they were a little bit wanted to keep the money for themselves. Maybe they took off the Truma. They all took off the Truma, and the majority took off the 10% to give to Ralph, to give to the Leviim and the other types. But it was a minority that did not. Because of that minority, the rabbi said, when you buy the produce from these people, you should go ahead and you should type it yourself. Separate the types. But what I recall is, but you're allowed to actually keep it and use it for yourself, even though usually types is the money of the Levi. But then there's something called a Safek Mamon. Who does this money belong to? Because maybe the Levi already received it. Because maybe the uneducated Jew who you bought it from actually already gave it to the Levi. But you don't know. So as long as, of course, you don't know, you're going to separate it. Because by separating it now, you remove any possible prohibition on the food. But the food, if it's not separated, then it's tevel. Then you can't eat the food. But now we break it. Now the money, now that tithe is a money issue. Who does that tithe belong to? Me, because maybe the Levi maybe he already gave it to the Levi, or does it belong to the Levi? So I think we have a rule, Motzi Mechavero, in such a case, the burden of proof is on the Levi to prove that he has the right to it. Interesting phenomenon, right? So that is the ma'asrin esat mai. And the Mishnah states that when you're in twilight, the twilight zone, after the sun sets, before it gets dark, you can't separate maaser at that time. Maaser that you know for sure was not taken off from the produce, because let's say that's like fixing it. But when it's produce that it's a doubt whether it was taken off, produce that you bought from the uneducated Jew, that you're allowed to go ahead to separate that during twilight time. We're going to be more lenient on that produce than regular produce that definitely Ma'aser wasn't taken off. Because number one, there's a good chance that it was already taken off. So your separating is not really doing any fixing. When you know it wasn't separated, when you know, let's say your own produce, it's something you didn't buy from the Gentile, not Gentile, from the uneducated Jew, something you had in your own property, and you know my tithes weren't taken off, that they will not allow you to do during twilight zone. Okay? And then the Mishnah says, Uma Orvin. Good morning, Simon. And the Mishnah stated we could do an Eruv, technically, after twilight. The Mishnah earlier seemed to indicate you can't do it after twilight, because the Mishnah stated that you make sure, the Mishnah stated, the Mishnah stated before sunset, you go ahead and you talk about the Eruv, which seemed to indicate you can't go ahead and deal with the Eruv once the sun went down, once it's twilight. And here it says you could deal with the Eruv, and we're going to see the Gemara is going to make a distinction between what Eruv we're talking about. As you know, there's different Eruvim. There's an Eruv Chatzerot to allow you to carry from your house. If, let's say, you have multiple people, multiple homes share a courtyard. So we said, in order if it's a community, there's no Eruv. If you can't walk in the street carrying anything, so that, because let's say the street is a public street, the rabbis were concerned if you're going to go ahead and carry from from the houses to this semi-private, whatever, this courtyard, which has some resemblance of a public, semi-public, because it's used for all the members of the homes. So then the people will make a mistake. If I could carry from my house to this semi-public courtyard, I might come to carry from my house to the actual real public domain. So therefore, the rabbis instituted something to collect food from each member of the courtyard, and that will go ahead, or one person give a certain amount of food for everybody, and that will go ahead and give you the allowance, and you put that food in one person's house. That would allow you, that unifies the court, it's as if that everybody belongs to that house, and therefore you could carry from the homes into the courtyard. So Gemara is going to make a distinction between that type of Eruv and Eruv, what we mentioned, is called the Eruv Techumim. The Eruv Techumim is a Eruv that has to do with the boundaries. On Shabbat, the rabbi said you can't walk more than 2,000 amot outside the city, and 2,000 amos are between 3 and 4,000 feet. But let's say you have a Devar mitzvah, you have a mitzvah that you need to do, you want to go visit your rabbi, or you want to go ahead and visit someone who's sick, or you want to, whatever it is, and that person lives more than 2,000 amos outside the city. So what could you do? So they said if you put 2 meals of food within the 2,000 amot, let's say put it at 1,500 amos, 1,900 amot outside the city, you had a right to go, let's say 2,000, that extends, if you put the food there before Shabbat, that becomes your place of residence, because your food is there. And therefore, then you can walk and get another 2,000 amot from that spot you have 2,000 amot, you could go further as a result of putting your food over there. So that type of Eruv, the Gemara is going to say, according to Rashi and Tosfot, that we're going to be more strict, and we're not going to allow you to do that Bein Hashmashot. You can't do that after twilight. You have to make sure to do that before twilight. We'll see that in the Gemara. Now, then the Mishnah says, V'tomnin esachamin, that if you have food that is hot and you want to insulate the food. So let's say on Shabbat itself, you can't take a pot we're going to see in the Gemara, you can't take a pot off, let's say a boiling pot of food, morning, Morris, and you can't take that pot and wrap it on all the sides just to contain its heat. That's something you can't do on Shabbat. You want to wrap it on 3 sides. You want to put a towel on 3 sides of the pot. You can put a towel, good morning, on 3 sides of the pot, but you have to leave one side open or a certain amount of a side open. You have to, you can't totally insulate food on Shabbat. We're going to see in the Gemara what the issue is. But the Gemara says here, with that, you're allowed to do Bein Hashmashot. If you went ahead and after twilight.
Could I cover a pot that already is a round pot? I just put a cover on it. I'm allowed to cover the pot?
Cover is not a problem, but if you're going to go ahead and insulate, let's say you have a pot of food, and
Right.
you're going to wrap that pot of food with a towel from top to bottom, so that would be a problem on Shabbat. You can't totally
Insulate.
insulate a pot on Shabbat. But the Mishnah states you could go ahead and if it's Bein Hashmash. Now, before Shabbat, no problem. Before Shabbat, if you have a pot that let's say you don't want to keep any fires on Shabbat, let's say you don't want the place, let's say in the summertime, you don't want things to get hot, right? You don't want the kitchen to be hot. So let's say you made a beautiful pot of soup. So before Shabbat, what do? You took the pot of soup off the fire and you wrapped it in a towel. But you did it before Shabbat, and the towel doesn't add heat. It just keeps the heat. There's no additional heat happening. So that is fine. You can wrap the towel of the soup before Shabbat. But on Shabbat itself, you can't do that. You can't take a pot, let's say you had a pot of soup on the fire, you had a pot of soup, and then Friday night came, you put the pot off the fire, and now you want to wrap it in the towel. That you can't do on the Shabbat. Nevertheless, the Mishnah states, when you're in twilight zone, so to speak, when you're in Bein Hashmashot, when you are after sunset. So if you're after sunset, before it gets dark, so we were lenient for you to go ahead and technically, if you need to insulate the food using something that does not add heat, so they were lenient during that time period. We'll see in the Gemara more about this. Okay, so we'll see more about this. Okay, so that's the Mishnah that we said on 34a2. That concludes the Mishnah. Now we're gonna do the Gemara. So the Gemara says, we said one of the things that a person has to say to the members of his household, that he's required to say on Friday afternoon, late in the afternoon, is you say light the candles, right? I don't know that everybody today says anything about lighting the candles because the women are doing they know to light the candles. But the point is, if you see it's late in the day, right? If a person sees that it's late in the day, low mark at the Gemara over there. If you see it's late in the day and the candles weren't lit, so what do? You're supposed to say to your wife or whoever's lighting the candles, please light the candle. It's time to light the candles, right? So it's something that a person needs to be on top of the game. That means the husband needs, or whoever the man of the house, whoever is running the house, should be responsible to say something, see something, say something. You see the candles aren't lit, you need to go right from assignment, you gotta say.
Candle is not lit, it's already time of Shabbat.
No, before Shabbat. No, before Shabbat. We're reminded it's before Shabbat, but it's already getting. Right. A lot of people actually set the candles up. A lot of people, what they do is they actually set them up, they light it, and they blow it out. What's the purpose of that? Is because when you light it and blow it out, it makes the wick a better wick. Because then it catches easily. But once you lit it, right? That's what some people do. But it's a mitzvah for you to be involved in, especially you're supposed to be involved in some sort of preparation for Shabbat. You know, every man should try to do something in honor of having the Gemara. This rabbi, Rava Malashud, he salted the fish. This rabbi cut the wood. Different rabbis, even the great rabbi, what? Shopping, right? Even people did all different things, and it's in the honor of the Shabbat. So if you're not lighting the candles or blowing it out or setting it up, make sure you should try to do something in honor of the Shabbat. So now the Gemara. So we're saying late in the afternoon you should say something. There's a fascinating Rashi that we saw why do you do, and you ask them about the Eruv, you ask the family members, did you make the Eruv? Did you take off the types? Why do you do it late in the day? Well, you want to ask them about, did they make the Eruv to him? You want to ask them about, why don't you ask them earlier in the day, in the morning? We find Vayashkem Avraham Baboker. Avram got up in the morning, right? We find he do the Brit. Early. It's Rizim like the Milah Mitzvot. It's always you always want to do things early, right? You have an opportunity to do a mitzvah. You don't say delay later. It's not late. You're supposed to do it right away. So why is this mitzvah of asking the household, did you make the Eruv? Did you take off the maaseh? Why is that done? And also to tell your wife, you remember you have to light the candles. Why is it all done later in the day? So Rashi says something amazing thing of human nature, as we all know. When you tell someone too early, I have time. I have time. So you tell them at 10 o'clock in the morning, did you take off the maaseh? And you can ask them the question. The person will say, I have time to do it later in the afternoon. Or did you make the Eruv? I'll do it later. And do it later, comes later. You forget to remind them later. Never done. But when you're asking morning, Nathan, when you ask them later in the day already, and there's not too much time to do it, they'll do it at that time. So the Gemara says, Menahani Milei. Where do we find that it's your responsibility to tell the members of the household to light the candles, right? It's your wife's, let's say it's the wife's responsibility. Of course, if the wife doesn't, everyone has responsibility to light the candles, but the wife is the one who would give the mitzvah to do. If she doesn't do it, the man will do it. So where do we have a source that you have to go ahead and say it to them? Amar Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi Umakro, Ki Shalom Ahalecha. You should know that there's Shalom Ahalecha. There's peace in your tent. Now, how do you know that there's peace in your tent? Because what is the peace referring to? It's alluding to the idea of candles. Because Shabbat, Ner Shabbat is called Shalom Bayit. When you have light in the house, when you have light, that's when you have peace. That's because why you have peace? Because you don't fall. People don't fall. People fall, and you don't see where you're going. It creates a little stress and lack of shalom, lack of peace. You need to command your household. Therefore, you will not sin. Meaning to say, if you don't remind the members of your household, you're not top of your household, you get the sin. You get a sin. They get a sin for not doing what they're supposed to do, and you get a sin for not supervising. So that's your responsibility as a man of the house. You are supervising. You're the mashgiach. You are the one who supervises to make sure that things are done right. Just want to share. Not so long ago, Pashas Chayesara, we had the miracle that happened that when Rivka was brought into the tent, the miracles came back that were there when Sarah was there. One of the miracles was that the candles of Shabbat lit from Friday to Friday, right? That was a special miracle that when you lit the candles on Friday afternoon, when Sarah lit it, it lasted the whole week. And when Rivka did it, it also lasted the whole week. And the question is, what is the symbol? What is the message of the lighting being lit the whole week? So Rabbi Sturbach says that the lighting the whole week represents brightness, cheer, simcha, happiness the woman brings to the house. And therefore that was what she brought to the house, a great happiness, great light. But I wanted to say, based on this Gemara, that light represents Shalom Bayis, The idea of it lighting the whole week represents there was Shalom Bayis the whole week. The light was burning. That means it's a symbol of peace. The light is burning, which represents, so candles represent peace. So people like Sarah and Rivka, the epitome of Shalom Bayit, and that's the epitome what represented by the candles the whole week. That's my thought, just sharing that my own chidush. Yes. You like it, Mark?
Sometimes I think about people who bring their entire work week into Shabbat and talk business on Shabbat. And here you have an example of two women that took Shabbat and extended Shabbat into the entire week.
Beautiful,
And
right.
brought all of the Kedusha and the holiness of Shabbat throughout the rest of the week on a continuous basis.
Right. They're beautiful. 100%. As we know, the Navi says you're not allowed to talk business on Shabbat. what stock, I'm going to buy this stock next week, or I'm buying this building next week, or whatever. That's not supposed to be done on Shabbat. Okay. Amar Rabba Bar Huna. Now we're continuing on 34a2. Now here comes an amazing Gemara. Even though we said there's three things you need to say, first I want to welcome you. Thank you for joining us today, the class. Even though we say there's three things a person needs to say on Friday, you have responsibility to supervise, to make sure, to ask, did you make the Erev? Did you go ahead and take off the taif? Did you go ahead and you say light the candles? But how do you say it? It's all in the packaging, right, Morris? It's all in the packaging. The same way you need to say it, you need to say it pleasantly, softly, calmly. There's a way. Why? In order, very practical. You want them to do it. You want them to do it, to light the candles properly, and you want them to every week be on top of the game, making the eruv and take off the maaser. If you say it nicely, say it gently, say it softly. It comes, Amar Rav Ashi. Rav Ashi says, you know what? Who said this statement? This is Rabba Bar Huna said the statement. So comes Amar Rav Ashi. Says, Ana lo shmiya had Rav Huna. I never heard this teaching that Rav Huna said you have to say it softly, but I didn't need to hear it. I didn't need anyone to tell me. But then I understood on my own. What the rest of the people need it sometimes, right? Sometimes people in their enthusiasm, or whatever the right word is, to get things done, they get a little, they talk with pressure, and they're very strong about things, and that's how you're not going to get things. It says divrei chachamim benachat nishmaim. Smart people, they talk gently, they talk softly, and that's how things are. People listen. Amar Ravashi, I know lo shmieli, I didn't hear it, but I did it without hearing it. I understood that's the way you're supposed to talk in order to get things done. Now, Hogufa Kasha. The Gemara says we have an apparent contradiction. What's the contradiction? You say there's three things you need to say b'toch beito erev Shabbat chashecha. Im chashecha in. That means the Gemara's understanding you need to say it before sunset, and the Gemara's also understanding because that's the only time it could be taken care of. But if it's after sunset, but safach chashecha in, ein chashecha lo. Let's see the language again. Safach chashecha. Again, safach chashecha. Let's see the language of the Gemara. Hagufa kasha. Amrit shlosha dvar masach adam lo masach ve'erim shem chashecha. Im chashecha in. Only if it's before sunset. But safach chashecha. But safach ein chashecha. But once already sunset, it's a question whether it's night or not night. Lo, you can't. It's too late. Meaning, eruv. You mentioned the eruv has to be said before sunset. But when the Hadatani, then you said Safach Hashecha, Safach Hashecha Mariv. Then you told me that even if it's after sunset, you could make an Eruv. So that's the contradiction. On the one hand, you told me you need to say it before sunset. And the Gemara's understanding you need to say it for sunset because that's the time of opportunity. Once the sun has come down, you can't make the Eruv anymore. And then you tell me that you could make an Eruv after. It could insulate Tafut, correct. But it said you could. But provided you're not insulating with something that adds heat, just keep the heat. But now you told me you can make the Erev even after sunset. That is the Gemara's contradiction. So the Gemara takes a pause, a station identification now, and the Gemara says, I want to tell you, we're about to mention Rav Abba, the name who said in the name of Chia Barashi, who's saying in the name of Rav, and we're going to now give a mnemonic. We're going to use one word that's going to allude to mnemonic. Thank you. Mnemonic. It's spelled M-N, but Nathan knows exactly how. Oh, it's N-E. Oh, M-N-E. Okay. So that mnemonic, if I pronounce it right, we're going to say, good morning, Asaf. Welcome, Asaf. We're going to mention, let's say he says 5 statements and 5 different laws, 5 different Gemaras. we're going to mention one word that will allude to that statement. Each one word for this statement, one word for that statement. That's what we're doing right now. So the Gemara says now, it's right. Simon, the sign of what this rabbi said, this upcoming rabbi, is begufei, begufya, zimra, sipora, bechavla, and bechavla de milta. So we'll see these things coming up. Okay. Amar Rav Abba bar Chia bar Ashi, he says the following: Lo kasha. It's not a contradiction. Now, when it says gufei, gufya means the statement that Rav Abba is saying right here. That's like gufa, this thing, and we'll see the other simanim as we go along. He says, "Lo kasha kan be'eruv techumim, kan be'eruv chatzerot." One is talking about eruv techumim, and one is talking about eruv chatzerot. And what do we say? Techumim, we say is the boundaries, is walking. How much walking you can do? You can't walk more than 2,000 amot on Shabbat outside the city. So we're saying that we're going to be more strict because that it's alluded to in the psukim, alludes to this law. Now, regarding eruv techumim in general, how far on a Torah level you can't walk out of a city. So there's a machloket whether it's a biblical law that you can't. This law of techumim is biblical violation, a rabbinic violation, and even if it's a biblical violation, it's not 2,000 amot. It's the size of the Jewish camp, much larger area to walk out of the city. But nevertheless, this idea of techumim is alluded to. It's alluded to. A lot of times the rabbis see certain things in psukim that the way that that hints to certain laws. A lot of times when they make a law, they like to see alluded to already in the psukim. And this law was already alluded to in the psukim, and therefore it's much stricter. We're more stricter by techumim, by the boundary. Therefore, we're much stricter. In what way we're stricter? That we require that has to be done before sunset. Once the sun comes down, once you're in twilight zone, you cannot go ahead and make this eruv if you want to walk, you want to meet your rabbi, you want to greet your rabbi, you want to go ahead and visit someone who's sick, and you want to place this food, these 2 meals of food, 1,900 amot outside the city, because you can't go to that before the Shabbat. You have to make sure you do that before sunset. However, the courtyard, be able to walk, to carry from your house. If multiple houses open up to the same courtyard, we're talking about a city that has no eruv, you want to carry from your house to the courtyard, they're more lenient with that eruv, and you could create that eruv collecting from each member of the courtyard or wherever you do it. You could even do that after sunset. You can't do that only during the twilight. You can't do that on Shabbat itself, but you could, that one more lenient, you could do it during the twilight zone. That's what the Gemara says. Okay, v'amar Rava. Now comes another interesting piece. Amru lo shnayim. 2 people said to one person, right? You have 2 people appoint this individual, and they say, "Save arev aleinu." Please make an eruv techumim. We want to travel on Shabbat. We have a mitzvah to do. That's what they allowed techumim. Make this to extend the time that you could the play, how far you could walk by making this eruv. They did it specifically for if it's for a mitzvah purpose that you want to go ahead and perform a certain mitzvah on the Shabbat. So 2 people said to an individual, you be our agent. I want you to be our agent and place food for us. You have to look in the laws. Do I have to give him the food, or just it's my food? It's my food. You're a shliach. You're a messenger for me. So Reuven and Shimon said to Levi, I want you to place the food for us. So Levi is going to put the food for Reuven wherever Reuven needs the food to be put. He's going to put the food for Shimon wherever Shimon needs to be placed. But what did he do? He went ahead, le'echad, for one of them, Erev alav mibod yom. He placed the food before Shabbat, which is the way you're supposed to do it. You're supposed to go ahead and place the food, the two meals, and that makes it like his residence by putting the two meals in that spot. Let's say 1900 amot outside the city, and he did it before Shabbat. The second guy, he placed it after sunset, which he should not have done, because you were supposed to make the Erev Tchumim before sunset. Okay, but he did it. We'll see what, that even though the rabbi said you should not do it that time, we're going to see it could still take effect. But now.
One of the ways that it can take effect, that because he already created that extended boundary for one of them, that he can be taking the food for the second one under the umbrella, if you will, of the first one for whom he'd already extended.
So each okay, so we're going to see each one is independent of the other. We're going to see like this. Now what's interesting is the first guy, he made the Erev before sunset. The second guy, he set the Erev after sunset. But now what happened? The law is before night. But the law is like this. When you make the Erev Tchumim, the food that you placed has to be there when Shabbat entered. Let's say
entered, whether entered is nightfall or entered is
right. When is night? Right. Exactly. So now, if what happened if you put the Erev Tchumim, let's say Shabbat today, sunset is around 4:28, whatever, I'm guessing 4:28, whatever the time of sunset is. If you place the Erev Tchumim at 3:30 in the afternoons on Friday, and at 4 o'clock it was eaten up, it's no good because Shabbat entered. You didn't have
isn't there.
Therefore, it isn't there because when Shabbat comes, this has to be your residence, like because if your food is there, that's like considered like you live there, and therefore that extends your ability. Therefore, you can walk 2,000 amot from the place where your Erev is. So now, the one that you made the Erev on after the afternoon before sunset, his Erev was eaten up. A dog came, and an animal came, and he ate the Erev. He ate the food. They smell food. And let's say he was told that someone that the dog, we saw a dog came and he ate the food. The food is gone. The food is already gone during twilight. But like Nathan said, if twilight is considered nighttime, it's considered already Shabbat, so then he already had food in the right place when Shabbat entered. If sunset is considered night, it's considered Shabbat, so now he already had the food in place and he's good. That became his residence. But if twilight is not night yet, so therefore if it's still daytime, so therefore it was consumed before Shabbat really came. So that is the question for that guy. And then the next guy, the guy who made his Erev on twilight, after sunset, before night, his Erev got eaten up once it was already night. So the second guy, the food stayed until night. The food was there until night. But the question was, when he made his Erev after sunset. So if after sunset considered night, that means it's too late. If you say after sunset is night.
The first guy didn't know if the food was taken or not taken. What happened?
Yes, I don't know if you have to. Right. Right. So that's a good point that Mark is saying. Do you have to be concerned? Right. Do you have to be concerned? If you put an Erev, if you put food there, and it's only a small amount, usually you'll put the Erev later in the day, later in the afternoon. Or maybe the smart thing would do is put it later in the afternoon. So maybe, I don't know, that you have to be concerned that within a certain amount of time between now and night, or that someone ate it, that animal ate it.
Well, you should go there 1 minute before sunset and sit there until nightfall and know that it's there.
But I think
what you're saying here is, if this is a biblical situation,
it's alluded to, but it's not a biblical.
If it's biblical, both guys are off base, and if it's rabbinic, it's possible that both of them are still okay.
Exactly. That's what the Gemara is going to conclude, But the interesting thing is, the Gemara says here, Shneim Konu Erev. We're going to say they're both good. They both, we're going to be lenient both ways. And the Gemara is going to ask the question that seems to be a contradictory. Why is it contradictory? Because if you say, how do you identify twilight? Do you identify twilight as night? Meaning when the sun goes down, between the time the sun goes down and the stars come out. Now, we know when it comes to Shabbat, we're strict on both ends, right? Because maybe
that's actual work, but this is not quite actual work. It's like designation, and maybe because it's rabbinic, you can be in both directions.
right, exactly, right. But in the Gemara's question was logically it doesn't sound right because it seems contradictory. Let's understand the contradiction. If you made the Eruv, if a guy put the Eruv down before sunset, and then it gets consumed after sunset, before nightfall. If you're going to say it's a good Eruv, what you're really saying is sunset is night, it's already Shabbat. And then if that's the case, then if the guy put the Eruv was placed after sunset, that means you already placed it at night. So therefore it's too late. And yet how do you tell me in both cases that the Eruv is good? So say it again? Right, but it's true what Mark is saying, that you're supposed to put the Eruv Tchumen before sunset. But if you did, we're going to say if you did it after sunset, it's good. But how could it be good in both cases when you seem to be...
The twilight period is a doubt period.
Right, and that's what the Gemara is going to say. The Gemara is going to say that even though it's contradictory, but the fact is each person is coming with his own story. He's coming, guy number one, Rabbi, can I go ahead and use, is this a good Eruv? So Rabbi would say, we're going to be lenient to rabbinic law of the Eruv, and we're not sure if it's night or not. Maybe it was done right, we're going to be lenient. And the second guy comes to the Rabbi, even though it's going to come out, technically they're contradictory, but in each case, you look at each case separately, and it'll be good. Now, I want to get tomorrow. We had someone who had a conflict tomorrow to do it at later. The question is everybody available to do it at the regular time tomorrow? You're not available at the regular time tomorrow. Okay. So, you know what? We'll just do 7:45 tomorrow? What says that good, Simon?
7:45.
Yeah, we'll do 7:45 tomorrow.
Okay, Rabbi.
And Friday, should we do the regular time Friday or what? What should we do on Friday?
It's a holiday weekend.
Even though the shul has is Sunday schedule, we'll do